Good day, dear participants of the Donbas Media Forum. My name is Eugene Zaslavsky. I'm an executive director of Media Development Foundation. I'm going to be your moderator today, and we will speak today about how the coronavirus pandemic has changed local media in Eastern Ukraine and how to handle media crisis in the regions. I am moderating this panel because Media Development Foundation develops works on development of organizations for them to have good strategies on this content or distribution of content and a reliable business model. Today we shall speak with our panelists, with Valeria Pechenyk, who's the coordinator of the Donbas Media Fellows Network. She's online and she will join us soon. With Valeria Garmash, the 6262 Komiua Slavic City website CEO. Hi, Gaygysyz is Geldiyev Jnomics Media, and Andrey Boborykin, the media manager, director of the digital marketing of the products of the Suspilne. Clearly that the crisis touched all of us, and we were talking a lot about the drop, 15% drops in sales and more, but those are just numbers. Those are just figures, but what does it mean for journalists who create content or any other audience who reads? So the economics dropped by 15%. And we cannot imagine well enough how much it can influence the specific media outlet. I would like to ask a question to Valery. Tell us, what do these figures mean exactly of this drop for your media, and what strategies do you think are worth following when you understand clearly that you close May, for example, with the result of minus 50%? And now again they have the orange zone, and you understand that September you will have good figures, but in October you will see another drop. When you go to your sales department or when you go into your newsroom, what do you say then? Well, first of all, if you take a look at what happened for the time of the lockdown from March till May, of course, we had at least 40% drop from the direct sales, which shifted our understanding of how we are to create content, which resources to be used for content to be interesting. I will switch to Russian. It will be easier for me to speak. So we tried to do the following. We had a following budget for development. For the time when we were in the lockdown, we ate this budget a bit, and we were producing the kind of content that could be monetized. So, of course, the strategy that was in place was to find the companies which understood that ad offline is something difficult and useless, and you are to switch online. And a lot of attention was dedicated to communicate this necessity to transfer to online ad to the companies. So you're saying that you are checking the strategy, that is the transfer from offline budget to online budget ad. So digitalization, you are responsible for digitalization for them. Yes, it looks weird and funny, but that's what it looks like. How bad the situation is, that very short timelines. Well, first of all, the budgets are being cut, and you cannot ignore that some people can be fired, and of course this will be depicted on the content. So if you do not feed the content the audience wants to hear and see, you lose this audience, and you become less interesting for the ad company, ad agencies, and you are to stick to the balance that you can create good content and also fit in the budget that you have. given the sales drop significantly. Wonderful. You mentioned content. I would like to speak with Valeria and discuss the topic of content with her. I think she has a very relevant experience for this. Can we hear Valeria? And will we be able to see her? She's always with us. Okay, she's was with us all this time. Okay, so hello, Valeria. Greetings. I hope you can hear me. We do. So a question, how did editorial strategies changed in media and how were they supposed to change? Maybe some part of media followed the false way, feeding the audience with fast content. What do you think could have been done differently? Thank you for your question. I would like to first give a short remark, concerning your first question on the ways and on the monetization of your media. Coronavirus and this whole corona crisis, especially in the active phase of the lockdown, showed an interesting tendency. The direct ad agency who were working directly with the media outlets, they left, but the donors, they even extended their vectors of work and their topics and tender propositions for media. So, and judging by our network that is represented by 12 independent editorial offices all over Ukraine, the media specialists were using these possibilities very actively. This was the chance to have like a financial pillow. Of course, it's not going to replace editorial budget or operative budget. It's not going to cover lots of expenses of the editorial office, but certain projects which seemed frozen, which seemed to be impossible to implement because of the lack of the funds, they could have been implemented, and they were implemented thanks to donor assistance. And this is vitally important because often our regional media, they don't just ignore, but maybe they consider they do not have enough experience, or they think they have lack of possibilities or ideas to apply for such tenders. And this crisis was encouraging them to look for this way of the additional money. And I would like to say that for the past several months, I have been monitoring the results of different tenders for mini grants, for bigger grants, for some more serious support. And I couldn't notice a single short list of winners which wouldn't exist at least one of our editorial offices, which is our partner, which says that this works, and the editorial offices, they understood this mechanism and started using it. So I encourage all those who doubt themselves, at least try, because more possibilities emerged, in my opinion, and many point projects that can be even provided by the local editorial office. And now I will answer your question on the strategy and editorial policy, of course. For editorial offices, it has become a challenge, especially in the spring when we had a total lockdown, but it was a challenge, but not the matter of life or death. At first, it seemed that this would kill the work of the media's representatives in editorial offices, because small editorial offices did not have the mechanism of remote work. They did not have set connections of online work, and they had no experience of work in that regime. And there were also technical issues when the regional television cannot work from home, right? Editorial offices of the regional television, it has to at least be partly working from the studio. And first it seemed that it was a life or death question, but then it turned out that the mechanisms of how to change your works or reprofile, and they are in place for quite a while. So it's worth paying your attention at network media, at networks that have their own core points in other countries or within one country, but in different regions. So they work wonderfully through remote programs. I mean, Slack or Trello. There are millions of chats and messengers that they offer good set of functions which works. And we even have examples when journalistic story or report was made by means of Zoom, which we are using now. And the comments are recorded that way as well. So, in my opinion, this was a challenge for managers. Sorry. And for the editors. And they coped with it. Yes, it seems to me that a lot of them have coped very well. And now I would like to give floor to Andrey Boborykin. You wrote about the success of Suspilne in the digital area that they didn't have before, but that they can now boast of. So you, as an experienced media manager, went and achieved certain results. And the key thing is that you didn't lose them. So you are increasing your audience all the time. You report a lot that you can distribute very well. Tell us, please, how for other media, how did you do it? Clearly, that you have gained uh, lots of audience during Corona crisis. But what do you do next to keep this tempo and not to lose? What will your recommendations be? I should mention earlier we did not have such results because we did not have news site of Suspilne. It's a new project that emerged at the end of the last year. So there was nothing to report on before. And in the result that we have gained during Corona crisis and that we still have, my share of this result is not very big, since bigger part of its audience comes to regional content that is created by the departments in the regional offices of Suspilne. When coronavirus broke off, when the pandemics broke off in Ukraine, we received a big increase of the audience because we already had the the local audience, which were subscribers of the to the pages of the Suspilne, and the model of distribution of content of Suspilne in this case, I mean the digital news of Suspilne, is rather unique because very often media who have big communities on Facebook, they have one or two big pages, but Suspilne has many small and uh, bigger pages that have a very centralized audience. When the lockdown started, we were writing about it, and it was a super focused targeting without targeting. So people who were subscribers to Suspilne Lviv or Suspilne Kharkiv, they received content they were interested in.
I mean, news about whether to go to work tomorrow, what to do with your children, to go to school or not. And this, in this sense, if it get back to your previous question about the quality of the content or shocking content, we have a lot of discussions what is trash in the media. But in my opinion, if the media writes a lot about coronavirus, it is very difficult to to say that this content is not of high quality, if it corresponds to all the requirements or to all the standards of good quality journalism. If this is the content that the people need, for example, when we started writing about the lockdown, of course, this news had the biggest number of views and shares. Well, your example, the example of the Ukrainska Pravda and many other websites that lost a lot of their traffic. You managed to retain your audience. Well, you did, but less than the others. So there shall be some methods that you use to do that. So, for example, you decided not to feed those fast food news to the audience. You decided that we will provide longer features. You will change your content somehow. Your content will explain what is happening in the country. Well, we continuously work with the central editorial office and with the offices all around the country to improve the quality of our news, to broaden our formats. But I think that the result that we have, it can be explained that Suspilne has a lot of regional, uniquely regional content, which is not related to coronavirus or to political news or social news. For example, recently there was a feature about a grandfather who called the police because he didn't have anything to eat. It happened in Rivne, and it was a human story which corresponds to the needs of our audience. People want to read stories about other people, about their neighbors in other regions of Ukraine. As I've already told you, Suspilne has small and medium communities in every region of Ukraine. We have our own brand. It seems to me that you made your content paid content. It seems like your paid content increased. Probably, I don't really know. In order to get a lot of traffic from Facebook, you need to post a lot of content. This is actually my rule. I try to implement this rule whenever I work. So I think this is one of the reasons behind that. But if you calculate the number of editorial offices of Suspilne in Ukraine, uh, we have a lot of news, a lot of features every day. We publish about 200, 250 pieces of news or features every day because there are a lot of editorial offices. Unfortunately, not all the media have the opportunity, or maybe fortunately, they don't have the opportunity to publish so much content every day. And now I would like to give word to Guy, because I know that you consult regional media a lot, including national media. And you really try to understand what can go, what went wrong, and why the media manager took this or that decision. Maybe the manager didn't know what he could do, but because we don't have a lot of media managers in the regions, I mean, those people who are experts in building modern media companies. What, in your opinion, are the key challenges and key problems of media managers, and how can we tackle those problems? Well, in fact, at least on the Ukrainian market, the situation is the following. A lot of managers of the media, national and regional medias, are former journalists. They are excellent in what they do. They are excellent editors, excellent journalists. They create super content. But when it comes to management or marketing or financial management or HR, they start to do everything using the intuition. We know that in Ukraine there are no many platforms that teach media managers. People study at the universities for 5 or 6 years, and we just try to use different platforms to teach those managers everything that professionals know in just 3 or 4 months. Because of that, a lot of media are focused on the content part and forget about organizational, administrative, and financial parts of their work. During the lockdown, I worked with 4 different media from different regions of Donbas, from Mariupol, Pokrovsk, Bakhmut, or other media. Some of them worked in exile. They had different challenges. But the most important is how efficient their processes had been before. Those with the most stable and resilient management structure, it was easier for them to work. Others had to adapt very quickly to the new realities. People also were quite depressed uh, because of the indecisiveness, because they didn't know what would they expect in the future. I call life our super motivator when you have to really act and do your best. I noticed a lot that there were a lot of managers or media who didn't succumb to the panic. They started from optimizing their activities and optimizing their work. I think this is a first step towards solving the issues. Secondly, we also recommended them to diversify their income. My colleagues have just said that donors were quite active in helping media organizations. We also said that it is important. The most important is that the media doesn't depend on a single source of income. Valeria said that they created a unique, viable proposition for the media. There is one more factor which was very important. This is support of the audience. This is the most valuable part that a media might have. You said that traffic is increasing, but you need to say that the traffic, those media who were trusted, managed to increase their traffic. This is what happened not only in Donbas or not only in Ukraine, but all around Europe and the world. Independent media managed to increase its traffic. The growth rate was much higher. When you ask your audience for support, they are usually very eager to respond. They might be active or passive, but still they react. I saw how businesses decided to help the elderly during the lockdown to bring their food. This is how people helped during the war. All of these things are very physical. When you see a person in distress, when you understand that your help might impact the life of this person, you will help. There are excellent cases when, thanks to COVID-19, before the lockdown, we estimated how much money people donate for charity. It was about 10,000 of thousands of hryvnias. Now it is about $80,000 donated by the audience monthly to the media. This is so-called reader revenue. Thank you for the excellent numbers. How do you think why media didn't ask for such kind of assistance before? I think this is just the ideal way to go. For example, when the business said we will help those in need, we will help those clients or those who have no money, the state said that that it would also support the population. So everyone seems to help others, and the media also jumped on this wagon. Well, I would disagree with you. Before, during Maidan, several media managed to collect a lot of money. So we had this experience in our history. But Washington Post, their subscription increased after it was bought by Bezos. If you take a look at the peak, it was of this process, it was Trump pump. Our media reached out for the audience for support, but we have never worked on it in a systemic way. We just asked, help us, but we didn't do it on a systemic scale. 50 hryvnias or 300 hryvnias is not a big amount of money, but it really helps the media. But we didn't explain our value to the media. During the coronavirus crisis, they understood that they pay us so we can provide them with news. So I think the problem was in absence of systemic work in this direction. It all started in March and April this year, and now a lot of media introduced membership variants, others introduced a paywall, and now I think that there is a more systematic approach to these fundraising activities. So before, the media just asked people sporadically for help, but now it's a more systematic approach. I would like to comment on what Guy said. In this systemic approach, which we still lack, which we are still working on, the systemic approach also requires a product approach. We need to evaluate how much money. So this is about unit economics, which has been used for many years in IT companies. We only start using it in Ukraine, for the media in Ukraine. For example, New York Times evaluates dozens or even thousands of indicators about their readers. This is what we need to do as well. There is no such analysis of the media that use reader revenues. We need to develop those skills and those expertise. We will really need these knowledge and skills. And I would also like to say that you had a question actually, right? Yes, you consult the Ukrainians within the MDF project. Well, of course, I don't ask you for insider secrets, but maybe you can share some information. Maybe there is or there will be a media in Donbas that would like to do the same. It is interesting to read the stories of the ambassadors of the Ukrainians. Maybe you have any suggestions or recommendations on what to do to say that my audience loves me, it will support me, and I will be able to survive using this money. Well, we are not only starting these directions, we're only starting working with the Ukrainians. We do what I'm actually talking about. We bring this product approach to their models of reader revenue. Everyone, all the media that starts working with this approach in Ukraine, they start with value propositions.
Like, what can I give? What can the audience give me? How can I answer their questions? But at the same time, you always have to link it to certain indicators, which will provide the possibility to make some forecasts, to make an analysis. This is what we are working on. Going back to regional projects of this kind, I think in regions there are much more possibilities to create a successful revenue project They have because they have a more focused regional community you can talk to. If you're a regional media, you know the problem of the regional community of yours. On the other hand, you have less competitors there, unlike all national media, which have many competitors and who do not have paywall or don't ask anything from the readers, so the competition gets harder. This does not exist in the regions, but in the regions, the economic capacity of the average reader is a lot less lower than in Kiev reader. So there are pro and cons, but it seems to be membership model can be easier launched in the on the regional level than on the all national level. Valeria, I have a question for you. Valeria, I'm sure you can hear us. Maybe you have the answer why there are so many media in Lviv uh, which are trusted by their um, audience. What did they do to get this, that their audience is so responsive and started giving them money and support the media they are reading? I do not think that I can tell you details which processes they have undergone because each editorial office has its own process, but it seems to me there are a few important issues here. Yes, the media, like our, I support my colleagues to say that media are very inconfident. Usually, it's the story from Kharkiv, one of the participants of our network, the Nakipilo. They arranged crowdfunding campaign to collect funds for their needs, and they were very surprised how fast and how effectively this model worked for them. So I would like to emphasize on this, on being surprised. Why were they surprised? I think our regional media having a good possibility to communicate with their audience in their news feed, not in comments to some publications, but communicate more closely and to have a better understanding of their audience, they often ignore this possibility because if you systemically study your audience and apply a scientific approach to it, that this presupposes many funds because these are the studies, researchers, focus groups, so certain work that requires funds, which local editorial offices usually do not have. But if we skip this formal part, then our media, our regional media, have many opportunities to communicate with their audience, to study their needs, because in order to launch a certain paywall, you have to meet the needs or satisfy the needs of the payer for your product, of the consumer, and you have to treat your content as a product, but not when the editor is thinking, what would my audience find interesting? Well, I'm thinking this is interesting, so I think that my audience will think this is interesting as well. So you asked about Lviv. In Lviv, there are many examples where ambassadors and paywalls appear and other support from the audience is observed. It's because they have the tradition to get feedback from the audience. So, in order to take this step, it is important to turn your audience to be an active audience, to understand what you can give them, what they lack on this regional media market, what their audience would like, which kind of information would they like to see, and making your product user-friendly and interesting. The media are getting the added value. These are not new things. It's a well-known thing, but we often neglect these steps. So by modernizing your work and communicating with your audience, you can already count on readers being thankful and they will be willing to join, and it's not about some serious, idea or ideology. Yes, there are media you would like to associate yourself with because of their idea, like the Ukrainians. It's about willingness to be part of this community because of the key idea of this media, but also because they offer a good quality content. But not every media has a super task. Not every regional media has this super task around which you can group the audience. But after you study the needs of your readers or your audience, you can expect that your audience will be willing to pay for the content which is relevant for them, useful, and the one they are used to. Thank you, Valeria. Can you also reflect on this? I also have a question. Do you think you can build in regions not donations but paywalls? Do you think this resource can fit in the regions that is going to say, dear friends, this model is more convenient for us. We understand that you could pay us monthly on the monthly basis, sending us donates, but this way we will make better forecasts. What do you think? I think that reader revenue or the revenue from the audience is not the dominating source in Ukraine. But it's growing from $3,000 to $80,000 per year. It's a big indicator, but that's like something that we are discussing. It's the alternative source that has been in the market before this. But if we think from the perspective of membership or paywall, how do they differ? I explain it very simply. Paywall, it's the media as a product. You sell the exclusive content that has no alternative to it. That's the value of it. But membership, it's the media as a service. It's about a different thing. It means that you additionally provide some benefits. And it can be very different. Anything, it can be anything. But in both cases, you are trying to engage them with your mission. When a person gives you 5 hryvnias or 1,000, he or she makes a more emotional choice. Like Evgeny asked me, I trust him, I will pay him. And this ambassador way can also work well. And now speaking about paywalls in the regions, paywall, I agree with Andrey. Uh, the the models of subscription is a very tough version when you make the person to pay. But for many media do not have big traffic, and they are they might even lose some part of traffic when you when you bring up the wall between you and your audience, and it can have a negative effect. In the long-term perspective, this could be wonderful solutions. People did sell newspapers before, right? But I would start with a milder form. Support as much as you can, or start with crowdfunding. Like, I want to collect 50,000 hryvnias for 3 months and to make an investigation for the ecological state of my region. I mean, to analyze the water, food, and so on. And then we can see that we have personal data of these people, and we know we launch the second campaign and see how many people from the first campaign will support it in the second campaign or didn't support us, or how many people are recurring, and then I would attract those who are there for you all the time, would be actually the members. And then you can create for these members this exclusive content. So, you applying soft model first. Okay, but you know what? We have 20 minutes, right? And it's a standard, the one that the New York Times is building. Yes, but they have a crazy traffic. Don't forget about this. Yes, but there's a brand. If you have a brand, if you have traffic, then you can do it. And content, right? It has to be the content, unique one. Yes, it's a bonus. I would like to comment. I'm very skeptical about paywall and paywall perspective in Ukraine for another 5, 10, 15 years, because the effective paywall requires a certain market, Guy mentioned, and which one is small market of reader revenue, but paywall requires a much bigger media market in general. So if we compare our region with Poland, where market is 10 times or maybe 100 times bigger than the media market in Ukraine, and the digital advertising market as well, then they do have the level of competition that allows you to play and allows you to create some unique product on this market. In Ukraine right now, we do not have the size of the market, and nothing is indicating that the general market of money in media or in digital, even if it is going to grow, we will not have hockey stick growth. But if you speak about regions, in regions it's even slower. So I believe more in the membership models development, not just in Ukraine but in the world. It's a trend. Paywall, it's hard for me to imagine what how the content is to look like, so that the regional content could be yeah, for paywall. Even if it's high profile investigation, it shouldn't be under paywall anyway, because it contradicts the logics of journalism, especially uh, regional journalism. What the 20 minutes does, it's an experiment. It's a cool experiment that will give us many data for media research, studies of paywall perspective. So I do follow what. I'm not optimistic about the paywall at all. So I know that uh, you know he understands that even if from the 0.7% somebody would subscribe, he will have money for the editorial office. If PNL works, they haven't subscribed yet. So going back to media business, sorry, Valerie, that we were talking so much about additional, or if we speak about business and maybe even about HR.
Okay, you took part in our discussion about the regional media, and one of the questions is, most media say that they want to preserve the core of the editorial office of the, because they do a product. But when we're talking about the positions that you want to find, there were journalists, designers, and other creative journalists. So these are usually people that spend money rather than generate money, if I can say so. During the crisis, we shall employ people who bring money, not spend them. Well, What can we do if there is a loss in revenues? In our experience, in our case, we were looking for salespeople. For us, this was the key element because we understood that if the sales coefficient falls in one salesperson, then we can find other salespeople. We broadened this funnel by employing new people. I have a strange formula that per one person that spends money, we shall have two that generate money. This is a road to success in our case. Designers and core of the editorial office, editors and journalists are very important. They generate traffic, but they are human beings. They want to get salary for their work. They want they want to get money, they want to get paid, they want to develop further. But we need to get this budget from somewhere. That is why we focused on looking for people and looking for other ways of monetization and getting additional revenues, maybe to find other avenues of getting income. During the crisis, we launched a completely new direction, which helped us hear pains of our clients. We understood that they didn't want to develop their business through other platforms. So they want to do it through their websites, YouTube channels, and social networks. So we sold our expertise in how to do that. We provided our consultations because we know how to distribute content. A lot of private companies, small, medium, and even big companies used our expertise and bought our consultations on selling content. This is what helped us strive when we started receiving less advertising revenues. Part of the clients that chose this new direction of activities managed to increase their revenues almost in 8 times. For example, before that they spent 10,000 hryvnias, and now they spend about 80,000 hryvnias per year. These are completely different numbers, and they are ready to invest more. The crisis showed that you need to be more creative, you need to promote yourself. Those people who understood how to do that started building this communication and understood that it is quite efficient. I really like your point of view because we discussed corporate media. And it seems to me that this market in Kiev has already been closed. And that media won't be able to make money. But your experience showed that it actually is quite efficient, that small and medium enterprises also must know how to distribute content, how to produce content, and you have to be as a provider into this new world. We have professional expertise, knowledge, and skills, so why not use our knowledge? We're one of the most popular websites in Slovyansk. We show growth during the lockdown. Some of the media managed to retain their readers if we know how to interact with our audience. So then we are the experts in this, of course. Now a lot of companies use not only social networks, so they also ask us to create content and distribute content in YouTube. So they entrust us with these responsibilities. This is what a lot of media do by themselves. The benefits of this process is that no editorial office doesn't do anything against its editorial policy. They just create additional services. They propose it to the markets, and they can create interesting content by getting money from these new avenues of revenue. Can I please ask Guy the following? If we try to think about Ukrainian markets, then it does change. Previously, it was strange for the companies to build a SMM targeting activities inside, to create an event agency inside the media office. But now the media business is quite diverse. So, do you feel that managers have this collision in their minds and souls so that they don't know who they are? Because we are jack of all trades now. We produce content, we sell our products, we know what cinematography is. So we do a lot of things. Who we are. Thanks for such an excellent question, which is quite challenging at the same time. It seems to me that for journalists, it's very important uh, to do their core content, to produce content, to meet the needs of the audience, to show the way, to show what is happening around. I think that they need still to focus on that. But in addition to what Valeria has just said, you need to have money for that. In the digital era, we are not competitors any longer. We compete with digital giants, with businesses that learned how to interact with their audience in social networks. Your traditional approaches, your traditional subscription models no longer works because people do not consume such content as it was in the previous century. People no longer trust in direct advertising using CPM formula. So, for example, people see advertising and the media gets paid for that. All of these approaches are quite traditional and outdated. There are new points of contact with the audience. Before, we were intermediaries between the audience and the business. We took money from each of them to ensure their communication. But right now, this model is no longer efficient after the emergence of the internet. So the question is, what do we suggest now? For me as a business, for me as an advertiser, it's not interesting what media might offer. 6 hryvnias per one contact in native advertising, it's nothing. Why do I need to do that? They don't generate any leads, there are no sales. So maybe brand awareness is one thing, but it's not enough to be able to survive. I will manage only to survive if I have a resilient model of development. Here I completely support Valeria and other colleagues who find other non-traditional ways to business development. If they want to organize events, they can do that. If they can make money doing that, you are welcome. They just need to be careful that they still stay true to their core business, journalism, producing content, and all the other ways are only supporting ways to do that. You also asked me about other ways of doing that. There are several hundreds of them. And if I take a look at my notes, I can tell you about 200, 250 ways of additional revenues. I agree with Guy that these monetization activities shall not overlap the value of the core business. But at the same time, it's quite difficult to reach this ideal balance because I often see that the media builds an excellent event project which works every year and supports this media brand. But at the same time, if this event project gets its own brand, and if the editorial services are no longer relevant, then we have a separate event business which doesn't bring any added value except money. And the media doesn't bring any added value to this event business. This actually happens quite often. There is no answer to whether the media need to do that or not. Of course, they might do it if they want to survive, because no one will pay salaries to your employees. But at the same time, I see a lot of cases when media include this media component into all those diverse models of monetization. When they have a lot of side projects that bring money, some of them are successful, some of them start living as separate projects. They interfere with developing of the core brand of the media. My next question will be quite easy, but when I'm talking to chief editors or owners of the media, for them this question is quite challenging. Programmatic advertising. Maybe you've seen a lot of people, media managers, who don't want to do that, who don't want who don't know what will appear on their website. I'm not sure if it will bring money. They don't know how to make money using this programmatic advertising. There are a lot of stories like that. So my question is quite easy. Shall the media use programmatic advertising when they have traffic and it increases? What are the first steps that need to be done? I'm not a specialist in programmatic, but if we are talking about increasing traffic and switching to programmatic advertising, I think it won't have a huge effect because keyword blocking, when content which is related to COVID-19 doesn't include advertising or includes advertising with lower CPM. It seems to me that I read in an interview with Suhir Musaeva that they had a similar process at Ukrainska Pravda when there was a spike in traffic. There was actually a decrease of revenues from advertising, from banners. If it doesn't look well on the website, well, I disagree with that. I think that any cool programmatic advertising specialist might advise how to do that so it looks cool and so it doesn't interfere with the user experience. If you turn on Google advertising, this is actually, you are showed what you Googled. This is your story. But there are other different networks that all, in addition to Google, that don't take into account what you Googled. The problem is that in order to take money, you shall have really high traffic. Only in this case, it will have sense in your P&L file. You shall have at least 10 million sessions per month, it seems to me, so it has any sense. If you have a website which has 1 million or 5 million sessions like that, potential revenue from programmatic will not be huge. This is not because of the platform which dominates around the world, but because in Ukraine digital market is too small. There are no competition for advertising in Google or Facebook, for example, and the audience is huge. We have 20 or 25 million of people who use internet.
Дуже
A big number of placements, but not a big number of competition for this. And this what has an impact for the price for each click on the ad. So the competition that is even present in Russia when they do not have a very big market, but their competition is much higher, and the site which has 1 million audience can already make money from the programmatic, unlike Ukraine. And this problem is more relevant for regions because lots of ad agencies, they have the ads only for big cities or Kiev. Click on the ad in Vinnytsia will cost less than in Kiev. But I think Ria Media, they have monetization, right? Yes, absolutely. And our friends. And some publishers sell it directly. But I agree with Guy that every brand now, every smart brand assesses this cost of contact. And with every crisis that we go through, level of how smart of the market managers is, their skills are growing. At the end of the 2000, not so many managers. 10 years ago, not so many managers were paying attention at click or value of the contact or lead generation. Maybe there was no even the term like this. And it all appeared because the brands had to increase of ESR and ROI. And I think that the media experts, they have to cling to it and work with brands, with corporate media in this direction. But in the long term, it's like digging a grave because the brand who knows everything about digital is not going to go to media because it's not economically feasible. Yes, I wanted to ask about long-term perspective. Valeria, what do you think about small regional media of Donbas and where we're all heading? Because it is obvious that a second, third, and fourth wave are approaching. We'll have other drops and more panic, and the newsrooms will have to work again with Zoom and others, and the motivation in the teams is decreasing. What would your advice be to the colleagues? How to go through October, December? Well, it's too soon to speak about it that it's going to be like this, but we ought to prepare for it. But regional media, they have, when there are many pages and we all want to know about our neighbors, due to this process, mostly regional media are working like this. When almost all organizations are not working, but media is still in its place because we can work remotely, but in our processes we fully transferred sales department for the remote work, but the editorial office kept on working. So I would advise to have common meetings so people would show that we are working together, and we still communicate. To have to give a individual call to talk with each one of them. Maybe to think about at least one to have a meeting in the workplace at least once a week in the editorial office, because no matter how much whatever we say, but we are social beings and we are used to communicating a lot with people. That's why we are to be given the possibility to do this. But the regional media, they do not have many many employees. It's usually up to 10 persons, so you have to organize at least 2 meetings, when one meeting with 5 people. And so you're saying to divide the team into groups so that they would not that they would have the possibility to interact with each other, and that would soothe them and charge them I think that's all because in the previous period of the lockdown, that's what we did, and we are happy with the result because we did not have the outflow of our staff, and people who had a goal to work and develop in this direction did not lose confidence in this work. They did understand that there were challenges or difficulties, but they even managed to find some pros, because people are all used to be working in the company's organizations. Not all of them had the possibility to work remotely, but then when communicating with the neighbors, they found out that a lot of their friends or neighbors, they were fired, but they have the possibility to work from home. But they have work and they keep on making money. And maybe they need to hear this. This is the specifics of work that gives you the possibility to work in the convenient format. So you didn't lose people, I mean, your employees, you didn't lose traffic and didn't lose the ad agencies. No, we lost, of course, money because when we were selling ad for the site, that's where we lost. But we managed to to replace it. We found the way to interact with business to make it convenient for us and for them to see the result. The aim of this interaction, we often say, why should the business be interested or why should we be interested advertising business? But it's weird. If the business is fine, they will have money to pay us. And if we build up the communication of business with us, with the audience in the right way through different platforms, then the business will only have a plus. Because then they will be able to pay for our services even if the prices go high. So this is in the long-term perspective. It's not that we have to sell it now, but we have to have a partnership relationship with business, because when we understand that we are partners and we have a mutual benefit, we have companies that are with us for 6 years, and such companies are more than 70%. So those that we have started working with are working with us for years. And the reason is because we give logical processes, we teach them how to make it right. They have some income, they see growth. And then the effect is the following. Why would they stop working with us if they have money to pay for our services and to interact with us? I would like to add. Go ahead. You said what's next, strategically speaking, that would be useful for our audience, for our participants. I think we need like a mini action plan out that would consist of 3 or 5 points. So first is to revise your strategy and to develop a bad scenario and good scenario. And it's not content strategy. No, no, no. The organizational strategy, the script of your region, of your country, or to write it. And if you don't have it, then you ought to create it. What if things go like this, and if things go well? Secondly, I would also think about the decision on the processes of how we are going to work offline, online, with this team. So to have a preparatory work. Third, I would also communicate with all stakeholders, all of them, customers, business partners, team members, then shareholders if there are any, and to also be aware of how they are preparing too, so that we would know where everyone is going, not you, but all who go around you. And then I would also check my product list and price list. Having discussed it with all stakeholders, we would know what's important now and what we have and what we don't need. And then, with a smile on my face, meeting a new crisis. Go ahead. If you have something to say. Okay, no. We still have 5 minutes. Do you have anything else to say? Like, which strategies would you advise to the regional media? Well, I support Guy, but from my experience, I see that not so many regional media have a clear strategy and understand who is a stakeholder in their organization. So it's a psychological step that must be made. And it can make everything a lot clearer than it was before. From the point of view of content and content distribution, all these processes which are ongoing right now, they will remain. So if we have a new wave or a new lockdown, this content or the base, the content that was created in spring will be again relevant. Then you will have to create the new content that will also be relevant for the audience. And we will hope that those media who are making on banners, they won't have such a drop because of keyword blocking. So the brands will somehow adapt to this new reality. So all we have now is gonna keep on being relevant. Valeria, could you please give the recommendations or advice to the regional media managers on how they ought to enter this second axis? You asked about whether or not there will be a panic. I don't think there will be a panic because first, when this lockdown was introduced, it was quite unexpected for us, but now we are expecting it. So I would like to say that we are discussing very progressive things on monetization, on the strategy, on the work of media managers, but it's worth understanding that local editorial offices, for them, it's mostly in theory. Yes, there are very progressive editorial offices which are following the trends, not just Ukrainian trends, but also world trends, for whom the word strategy and paywall is something significant, not from parallel reality. But at the same time, there are many editorial offices which are still slowly adapting to it all. And it seems to me any crisis moment is not only a challenge but also a possibility. I would highly recommend the editors and media managers, and often editor is managing the entire media project on the regional level. So I would advise them to draw the focus of attention on some, education or training, not on the content production, but on editorial work and on managers' work, and address the issues that are usually, postponed. Some work with the team or automation of the processes, studying, adequate studying of ways of monetization and some strategy, some business strategy in new realities. So they focused that it's going to be at the end. The second wave will start at the end of the fall. So we have these weeks still or months when we still can improve a bit more, study something important, not to repeat our mistakes. Thank you, Valeria. I hear that we have to stop. Thank you, dear friends. I think our key message to the regional media managers and journalists who would like to become regional media managers is to study and communicate with the colleagues who are experts at something, make calls with them, trying to get all this information from them, and to move fast as possible, because business is very competitive and many threats, much pressure, but many successful examples. Cool media managers are living next to you who create cool media content. Please follow them and follow the Donbas media forums and create a cool Ukrainian journalism, and I'm sure it's going to be on its high.